Okay, I'm just gonna say it. No filters, no performance, no pretending everything is perfectly figured out. Because there is a truth I've been carrying for a long time, and honestly, I'm tired of hiding it. This message found you for a reason, not because of some magical coincidence, not because of luck, but because something inside you is already aware of what I'm about to say. You may not have put it into words yet, you may not have fully admitted it to yourself, but you feel it. You know something is changing, you know something isn't working anymore. And today we're finally going to talk about it. Because the truth is this. Most people spend their entire lives looking at the walls while ignoring the foundation. They decorate the surface. They improve appearances. They learn how to smile at the right moments. They learn how to look successful, how to sound confident, how to convince everyone around them that everything is fine. But underneath all of it, something is quietly breaking. And that's what I want to talk about. Imagine your life is a beautiful house. From the outside, it looks perfect. The lawn is trimmed, the windows are clean, the paint is fresh. At night, the lights glow warmly through the glass. People walk past and think, wow, they really have it together. Maybe people think that about you. Maybe your family thinks it. Maybe your friends think it. Maybe your coworkers think it. Maybe you've become so good at maintaining the image that even you sometimes believe it. But deep down, you know the truth. Because you live inside the house. You hear the sounds nobody else hears. You feel the shifts nobody else notices. You know there is a crack in the foundation. Maybe it started years ago. Maybe it started when someone convinced you that your voice didn't matter. Maybe it started when your dreams were laughed at. Maybe it started after a heartbreak, a betrayal, a loss, a disappointment. A moment when life taught you that being fully yourself came with consequences. At first, it was just a small crack, easy to ignore, easy to explain away, easy to cover. So that's what you did. You covered it, you put a rug over it, you rearranged the furniture, you distracted yourself, you stayed busy, you became productive, you became responsible, you became dependable, you became the person everyone could count on. And while everybody was admiring the beautiful living room, nobody noticed what was happening underneath, not even you. Because sometimes survival looks so much like success that it's hard to tell the difference. But here's what I've realized. Cracks don't stay small. Not when they're ignored. Not when they're covered. Not when they're denied. They spread. Slowly, quietly, patiently, year after year. And eventually, you begin to feel the consequences everywhere, not just in one area of life, everywhere. Your motivation isn't what it used to be. Your excitement fades faster. Things that once energized you now feel heavy. Conversations feel exhausting. Dreams feel distant. Even victories don't feel as satisfying as they should. And you start asking yourself questions. What's wrong with me? Why can't I stay motivated? Why am I so tired? Why does everything feel harder than it should? But what if the problem isn't you? What if you've been blaming yourself for symptoms that were actually coming from a deeper place? Because when the foundation shifts, the entire house feels it. The doors stop opening smoothly. The windows stick. The floors begin to creak. The walls begin to crack. Everything becomes affected. And that's exactly what happens in life. When the foundation underneath your identity begins to crack, every part of your life starts showing signs of it. Relationships, career, confidence, purpose, self-worth, everything. And here's the hardest part. Most people never go into the basement. Most people spend their entire lives decorating the living room. They buy new furniture, paint the walls, hang new pictures, do everything possible to avoid facing the foundation. Because facing the foundation means facing the truth. And truth is uncomfortable. Truth asks questions. Truth demands honesty. Truth removes excuses. Truth forces us to look directly at the things we've spent years trying not to see. That's terrifying. I know because I've lived it. There were years when I became a professional at looking okay. I knew how to smile. I knew how to sound confident. I knew how to appear calm. I knew how to make people believe everything was under control. But privately, there was a completely different story happening. A story nobody could see. A story about shrinking. A story about becoming smaller. A story about slowly disappearing inside my own life. And maybe you know exactly what I'm talking about. Have you ever been in a conversation and known exactly what you wanted to say? The perfect thought, the perfect idea, the perfect observation. You could feel it. It was right there. And then you didn't say it. Not because you didn't know it, not because it wasn't valuable, but because something inside you whispered, don't. Stay quiet. Don't draw attention to yourself. Don't take up too much space. So you smiled, you nodded, and you let the moment pass. Maybe nobody noticed, but you did, because a small piece of you disappeared in that moment. And then it happened again and again and again. I'm just not that type of person. But what if that's not true? What if you're not quiet? What if you've simply spent years training yourself not to speak? What if you're not lacking confidence? What if you've spent years teaching yourself that confidence wasn't safe? What if the person you've become isn't who you are? What if it's who you've learned to be? Because there is a massive difference, and recognizing that difference changes everything. The truth is, somewhere along the way, you learned that being fully visible came with a cost. Maybe someone laughed at your ideas. Maybe someone dismissed your feelings. Maybe someone made you feel like your voice was too loud, your dreams were too big, or your presence was too much. And without realizing it, you made a silent agreement with yourself. Stay smaller, stay safer, stay invisible. At first, it felt like protection, but over time, it became a prison. Because every time you swallowed your truth, every time you ignored your instincts, every time you chose approval over authenticity, another crack formed in the foundation. That's why so many people feel exhausted even when nothing is physically wrong. They're carrying the weight of a life that doesn't fully belong to them. They're performing instead of living. They are surviving instead of becoming. And eventually, the soul gets tired, not because it's weak, because it's been ignored. Think about how many times you've known exactly what you wanted but talked yourself out of it. The job you wanted to apply for, the opportunity you wanted to pursue, the conversation you needed to have, the dream you secretly carried. You felt the pull, you felt the excitement, and then fear stepped in. What if I fail? What if people judge me? What if I'm not enough? So you stayed where it was comfortable. But comfort has a hidden price. It keeps you safe from failure, but it also keeps you safe from growth. It protects you from rejection, but it also protects you from success. It shields you from disappointment, but it also shields you from possibility. And one day you wake up and realize you're living a life designed around avoiding pain rather than creating purpose. That's the crack, not the fear, not the doubt. The decision to build your life around them. But here's the good news. The moment you see the crack, everything changes. Because awareness is where healing begins. You can't repair what you refuse to acknowledge. You can't transform what you pretend doesn't exist. The crack isn't proof that you're broken. It's proof that something inside you is asking for attention, asking for honesty, asking for change. And maybe that's why you're hearing this message today. Not because your life is falling apart, but because part of you is finally ready to stop pretending, ready to stop shrinking, ready to stop apologizing for existing, ready to stop waiting for permission to become who you were always meant to be. Because the version of you that you've been searching for isn't somewhere in the future. It's underneath all the fear, underneath all the conditioning, underneath all the years of trying to fit into places you were never designed to fit. And the moment you stop running from the truth, you start finding yourself. That's when the rebuilding begins. Not from perfection, not from confidence, not from having all the answers, but from honesty. Real honesty, the kind that looks at the crack and says, I see you, I'm done pretending. And from this moment forward, I'm choosing my life. Because that decision changes everything. And once you make it, nothing will ever be the same again. So here we are, you and me, standing in the basement of that beautiful house, looking directly at the crack, not running from it, not covering it up, not pretending it isn't there, just seeing it for what it is. And maybe that's the biggest shift of all, because the crack was never the problem. The problem was looking away. The problem was spending years convincing yourself that everything was fine when deep down you knew something needed to change. But now you're awake. Now you see it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's why this message found you. Not because you're broken, not because you're failing, not because you've somehow fallen behind. This message found you because you're ready to stop shrinking, ready to stop apologizing for taking up space, ready to stop living as a supporting character in your own story. For too long, you've been carrying expectations that weren't yours, fears that weren't yours, limitations that weren't yours, and every day you carried them, you became a little more disconnected from the person you were meant to be. But today is different. Today isn't about fixing everything overnight. It's not about becoming fearless. It's not about having all the answers. It's simply about telling the truth that you've been hiding from, the truth that you've been feeling, the truth that keeps showing up in quiet moments when the world finally gets silent. You want more, not more money, not more status, not more approval. You want more of yourself, the real you. The version of you that isn't constantly performing, the version of you that isn't asking permission, the version of you that speaks honestly, dreams boldly, and walks confidently toward what matters. That person has been there the whole time, waiting patiently beneath the fear, beneath the conditioning, beneath every story that convinced you to stay small. And now it's time to stop looking away, time to stop choosing comfort over clarity. Time to stop decorating the walls while the foundation asks for attention. Because the life you're meant to live begins the moment you become honest about the life you're living now. The crack is real. The house is shifting. But that doesn't mean everything is falling apart. And that person has been waiting for a very long time. The crack is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where you stop surviving and start living. A chapter where you stop hiding and start becoming. A chapter where you finally choose yourself. And when that happens, nothing will ever be the same again. Thank you for listening. And remember, don't look away. That's the only thing that ever made the crack worse. The moment you stop looking away is the moment everything begins to change. Much love.